To begin.
All righty.
The stream is going live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Are we starting? Are we live yet? Say when.
Yes, we are live, Dr. Cuneo.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are live. We are on a policy meeting. Let's start with our first one with policy minutes, or with the minutes from the last time that we were still working on.
Mm-hmm. And that one was just, we had gone back and forth on some language, and so incorporated the recommended language that we had. We just wanted to bring it back for one more look to make sure we got that all right. Yep. And so Rita, if you want to go down to the policy.
Click that one.
And so it's that paragraph in red by itself there of prior going into closed session, a roll call vote must be taken and approved by a majority of those board members present in open session.
That sounds great to me. I know we talked about that last time. Dr. Asner, you comfortable with that?
Yes. Yeah. Because it got rid of all that a quorum of a quorum of a quorum
Yeah,
business.
that became confusing to me.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what that all meant.
Yeah.
All righty. Let's move right along.
This one's just grammatical changes. This is the policy that says we can buy liability insurance if we want to buy liability insurance.
Do we have liability insurance?
That's actually a fun rabbit hole that I went down last week with Dr. Hogg, that it looks like we have not purchased it because almost everything that the board touches will be covered by sovereign immunity. So we have not made a purchase of liability insurance in at least 5 to 10 years that we could tell of going backwards. Even reached out to Rich Carver, and Rich is like, that's just not something that we've done as a board. But we just want to keep the policy on the books in case there is a circumstance where we want to add it because of the way political winds may fall.
Would it be worthwhile at some point I don't want to scare people, but to ask Charles, under what circumstances could we be sued? I always thought we had immunity on that, as long as we acted in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
As a board acted in good faith. I was trying
and that's where the policy references the sovereign immunity component. This is just one of those policies that MSBA recommends having on the books. But I mean, Dr. Keenan, I guess that's something we could ask Charles of.
Yeah. The only time I ever remember when somebody said about us being sued was a time, I still remember, it was that horrible dog case where they said we knew or should have known that it was against Missouri law that for the service dog, and the lady who was suing us sued the district and then sued the board members and the superintendent individually on that.
Yeah,
So,
but they're not treated as individual. The board would, the council for the district would still cover that. So people can cite, different board members, or they can cite in a lawsuit, but when you're acting in a capacity as a board member or as a employee, then the district will support the district council will support the lawsuit.
okay. All right. I see no reason to do anything with that other than
Right.
changes.
Yeah.
And I know there's some capitalizations in here that I didn't catch that need to change in that first paragraph. So I'll go back and fix those. But the big thing on BI was just adding that language down there at the bottom about in the event that a board member is operating in a capacity where they're speaking for themselves as opposed to the board, just making sure that they clarify that when they're interacting with elected officials.
The only thing I would recommend that we do on this one, and I think that's great, But can we stick that in the, how we have that, the board manual, reference it and then stick this in? Just so that if we get new board members, they should know this, or it should at least be in their manual.
Yeah, and when we were talking about edits to this, we were just thinking about how oftentimes our board members wear multiple hats. And so they might be speaking with an elected official as part of some other group that they're a member of, and just making it clear that they're not speaking on behalf of special school district.
Mhm.
Correct. We've had
Yeah, but
situations.
we can add this to the training that we do, or the onboarding for new board members.
We've had situations like this.
Policy is a good place to solve the problem.
I agree. Clearly that needs to be also referenced and put in the board manual. Otherwise, I think that's a great idea.
Kevin, I already fixed the first paragraph in the document.
Oh, thank you, Wendy.
What, then you meant that we're gonna change the B to small b?
Yes,
Yeah, the big
Okay.
Ds to the big Bs to the small Bs and the small Ds.
Okay, all right.
this one is mine. It's just minor grammatical
Nothing.
changes for school closings.
No,
We're on FC now, correct?
Correct.
that's not. We did nothing but change capitalizations
Correct.
Correct.
to small letters, yeah.
But
But it
we
is
reviewed it,
recommended
we
that-
felt it still applied.
Yeah. Sorry, Dr. Keenan. I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, fine with me.
Now, Rita, for whatever reason, the one that is posted is not the one that the attorneys also updated. I sent that to you separately. Do you also have that so you could show it?
She's got the tab pulled up.
Okay,
So-
perfect.
So how about, Wendy, we look at what's up there now, and then you talk about what we got from the attorneys.
Okay.
So Rita, if you want to pull up what's currently linked there in board docs, we can talk about that and then go over to what the advice was from the attorneys.
Policy GCG.
G.
GCG.
ECG.
Mhm.
So in the initial changes, Wendy, it was just grammatical. Is that right?
Yes, in the initial
Yeah.
changes, it was just grammatical. However, when we always have Charles and his support review it. He recommended doing a couple of changes by adding superintendent or superintendent's designee. Also, just some grammatical conflict or do not comport with Missouri law. Some other legalese. The major change was what he wanted to and how he defined permanent teachers. So I'll give you a minute to read that.
And Wendy, that's language to directly match the Tenure Act, right?
Yes, that language was placed in there from the Tenured Act. And by placing that in there, we also deleted the last bullet. So,
It says a
So Rita,
permanent,
if you want to scroll down,
yeah, sorry, it says a permanent teachers in plural of the district.
oh, go back up, Rita.
Can we go back up, please? I'm sorry.
I'm just reading that, I just want to make sure.
All right. Yeah, that would be singular, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks, I read through it.
okay. And
Can
then
you go back
the,
up one? Can you go back up one more time? please? Okay. All right.
and then the very last bullet we do not match that practice. So we struck it out. That is not something that we practice.
And it's not in the Tenure Act.
Okay. Why was it there before?
I believe it was something at one point that we did follow, but was recommended to be removed. And we removed it because it did not follow the appropriateness of the Teacher Tenured Act.
Yeah, it doesn't follow it at all.
Okay,
And this is one of those policies that, I mean, if you look at the last revision date was 2010. So it's one of those policies that it's been a decade since we've taken a look at it. And these are the ones where we find some of those oddball pieces where statute has changed, but we did not update our policy to reflect the changes in statute.
Mhm.
okay. Is that reference on the Missouri statute the most current one?
It is.
Senior 10, okay, great, thank you. That sounds fine with me.
Thank you.
So we already looked at, on this policy, we already looked at the professional staff version of this policy, and now we're just looking at the support staff. The two policies mirror each other. It's just making sure that they both have the same updates. So added the COVID vaccine leave to support staff, added in Juneteenth, and cleaned up some of those references to human resources. But it's identical to what you saw with professional staff leaves 2 months ago.
Sounds good. So we should have them exactly the same. I saw nothing.
And you will see in there, just for support staff, one difference is it does talk about how Juneteenth is a holiday for 12-month, but not a holiday for staff who work less than a 12-month year. So people who are off in June wouldn't get a June holiday.
Are there situations where we have employees who are not 12-month employees, but are working ESY? And
So in that case, they're an hourly employee and they would just be off that day. They just wouldn't work that day. We'd see that with like paraprofessionals where we just don't have that as a day of the ESY schedule.
thank you.
How about teachers, Kevin?
So teachers wouldn't be covered by this one. So teachers would be on the professional staff and they would, same deal, because during the summer, they're hourly. They would just not be paid for that day. They just have it off.
Yeah, because it's separate outside of their regular 10-month
Yeah,
contract.
it's an extra contract.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what makes Juneteenth and 4th of July our stickiest holidays, because it only applies to people who are scheduled to work as part of a salaried position.
okay. And the vaccine leave is the same for support as it is for professional.
Correct. It's
Great.
verbatim apples for apples match that we had for the other policy. It's a copy and
Applies
paste.
to everybody.
Great.
It's just part of that moving stuff out of temporary policies and moving them into permanent places.
Okay. Sounds good.
And then the policy, as you can see, there are just minor grammatical changes as it relates to the policy.
Okay. That's nothing.
And then a brand new regulation.
Now, I was going to say, as we said, minor changes about the policy. The regulation is brand new. As you can see, there was not a reg attached, and so with the reg being all red, the pieces of this are brand new as we talk about the regulation.
And the thought process that when Wendy, Michael, and I met to talk about this policy specifically, when we looked at other school districts, they had a regulation that went with HA. We were kind of an outlier in not having a regulation that talks about how do we handle collective bargaining and putting some guardrails in this process. So since this is a brand new reg, the thought was that we'd bring it to you guys today for a first round feedback, but absolutely might bring it back in a month again to workshop it and make additional changes as we continue to get feedback Dr. Macklin has shared this with our union groups to get some feedback from them as well, as far as this language goes. But this is modeled after Springfield Public Schools, their regulation for negotiations. And so we liked the way that one looked. And so pulled that over, but made some changes to make it a little more SSD friendly.
I had some confusion about the section that discussed when there are multiple unions involved representing the same employees and how that would be handled. And I'll see if I can find that paragraph. Here we go. So this is under contract ratification. In the first paragraph, if the board has recognized multiple unions to represent a single bargaining unit and all unions obtain approval from the employees represented, the agreement will be considered ratified by the employees, and so on and so forth.
Want me to keep scrolling?
Please scroll.
Yeah.
Second page.
Where was that language?
Under the ratification section. So it's keep going. Yeah, it's one of the last sections. Contract ratification.
Okay, right here.
Yeah. Are there situations where we have, and again, I may have misunderstood under what situation this would be relevant, but are there situations where we have multiple unions representing the same employees?
So not currently in our district have we operated this way, but there are times in other districts where they negotiate basically one JR covering multiple union groups, and so they put it all into one document. And so, like, hypothetically, we could have you could have teachers, or not, that's unlikely. You could have bus drivers and maintenance workers, both Teamsters, decide to negotiate together as one, as opposed to doing two separate agreements. That's not currently how we're set up. But since they are both under the Teamsters umbrella, they could choose, you know what, we want to negotiate together and just have one JR that governs both of us. And so this just leaves the door open for that to happen if they choose to go that route. But we haven't done that as a district.
Thank you. Okay, I was just struggling to understand what circumstances that makes sense.
Yeah, just like how teachers and paras are both NEA, and so we could wind up in a world where they decide they want to negotiate together and do one big NEA agreement with subsections for paras. That's a possible road they could go down. We just haven't seen that. But in other parts of the state, Teamsters have done some joint agreements.
Yeah, oh, that would be one union. It sounds like I think the other example where there might be a bargaining unit that includes multiple employee groups represented by different unions, and then if they disagree, then if the unions disagree as to whether the employees have ratified the agreement, all representative unions must submit to the board in writing a notarized affidavit stating the total number of employees the union represents, the names of the employees, and the number of employees that the union represents who approve the agreement. And then we will basically review that information and then decide, does that constitute ratification? Gotcha. Okay. The only other comment, sorry, while we're on my comment, is I'm not sure, should regulations include references to, should they include legal references? There were some laws that were, there weren't specific, I think, statutes, but there were laws in general that were referenced as in the actual policy, I think, had some references.
Yeah, we can add those cross references to the regulation.
Kevin, can we also, I hate to keep flooding that board manual and stuff. but there's a line in here that no individual from the board should be trying to negotiate singularly. We have had that problem before. This might not be a bad one to stick in the board manual too, mainly because we've had times in the past where that had become an issue.
Mhm. Yep, and this is a policy that kind of flies under the radar. So yeah, that
Yeah.
would be one worth noting.
Yeah, we've had some thought, some individuals wanting to negotiate with the union singularly,
Mhm.
and that did not work well.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason we wanted to add this regulation was there were things that we didn't necessarily want to put in the policy, but believe having a regulation does help put some better guardrails on processes. So everybody follows the same process.
I also dropped in the legal references into the regulation.
Beautiful. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have anything else? I would hope everyone this weekend can stay cool. As of tomorrow morning, they're putting in a new air conditioning in my home. So I hopefully will be able to stay cool. It has been brutal this week. I am
Wow.
tired of seeing individual air conditioners put room to room and emptying the water cans that the water comes into. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was, and making sure the dogs don't drink it. So, yeah, it'll be much, much better later as of tomorrow morning. So everybody stay cool. Have a good weekend.
Stay
Thank
cool.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.